Shining star.
They debated on the lines of what the people wanted, and what the people want is for the president to continue this term until 2030. It has come stark and clear that 2030 resolution has got overwhelming national support.
Right, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to your favorite channel, and please, if you are new, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that next time when I upload another video, you won't miss it. So guys, ndadzoka nemutauriri oro watinoti iye spokesperson weZANU-PF vanova ivo Mr. Chris Mutsvangwa handitika. So Mr. Chris Mutsvangwa vane mavhidhiyo avo avakaita interview kuSouth Africa nezuro paSABC nepa newsroom handitika, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm sure I am correct. So vaitaura ivo nyaya dzeCAB3 uyezve vane kubvunzwa kwavakazoitwa maererano nezviri kuitika kuSouth Africa about foreign nationals handitika. So ndine mavideos andiri kuda kuti musare panapa muchiona mobva mandiudzawo mucomment section kuti muri kufungei nemukutaura kwaitwa naMr. Chris Mutsvangwa. Remember, on this channel we don't take any side. Tinokupai nyaya sezvairi handitika, tinokupai sezvazviri. We don't take any side. We are not in politics here. Thank you so much.
Now, Zimbabwe's lower house of parliament has passed a highly controversial constitutional amendment bill that extends presidential and parliamentary terms from 5 to 7 years. The sweeping changes not only allow 83-year-old President Emmerson Mnangagwa to remain in power until 2030, but they also scrap direct presidential elections entirely, handing that power over to Parliament. ZANU-PF spokesperson Christopher Mutsvangwa joins us now from studio. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Nompilelo.
All right, I mean, let's start here. How does ZANU-PF justify the bypassing of a public referendum for such a fundamental change to policy?
Well, we don't have to go for a public referendum. The law allows for the changes which have been done. That's why Parliament has done it. You know, the constitutional authority to pass laws in Zimbabwe rests with Parliament, and Parliament is exercising that duty to the Zimbabwe people. So there's no obligation for a referendum in this particular instance. And the courts have even entertained some people who wanted to challenge it, and the matter has been thrown out by the courts. So if we have the judiciary and the parliament and the executive aligned, then it's a perfect solution for the Zimbabwe people.
I mean, let's talk about then the scrapping of direct presidential elections and what it means for the future of democratic accountability and opposition politics.
Well, it's a trend, it's a trend globally. Actually, here in South Africa, you use the same method, which is you don't elect your presidents directly. In America, they do electoral colleges. In many other countries, they do similar thing. It's a representative democracy. It's perfectly allowed. There's nothing untoward about that instance in the case of Zimbabwe. Our first election in 1980, when we were the prime minister, it was exactly the same method. We had an electoral college of parliament choosing who was the supreme leader of Zimbabwe. So the huffing and puffing about it has nothing to do about democracy. It's just people who are tendentious about any changes.
Is it really huffing and puffing? I mean, opposition parties as well as civil society organizations have really called this fundamentally a democratic backsliding.
That's their opinion. We went through a public consultation process all over the country. You know, you make it controversial, it isn't. There's almost near unanimity. You saw the parliament, the votes were almost more than two-thirds. You know, we were 232 out of the total. A few, dissenting voices from the opposition does not mean that it is controversial. It's democracy at work. People are allowed to have their own opinions.
So the bill also targets Independent Gender Commission, moving its powers then to the Human Rights Commission.
No, that has been struck out. The parliamentarians were not happy about that clause. Remember, my wife is the Minister of Women Affairs. You know, she was outspoken against it. The Women's League of the ruling party was outspoken against it. The senators, the MPs themselves, they removed that element from the executive bill.
Why was it there to begin with then?
Well, look, there were some people who felt that way, and then they put it, but it has been put to the test of the litmus test of the people of Zimbabwe. And both in consultations which went all over the country for 90 days according to the law in Zimbabwe, these public consultations of parliament, as well as in the debate of parliament, everybody opposed this particular bill, so it was dropped. This is a parliamentary process, a democratic process, which dropped the bill.
President Mnangagwa has previously called himself a constitutionalist. And, with the passing of this bill, critics would certainly not deem it constitutional at all, despite, what you have said throughout our conversation, that these are democratic channels that you have followed. But why the sudden shift to want to extend his term to 2030?
Well, look, people are entitled to their different opinions about a certain issue, but the democratic processes in Zimbabwe have been ticked. Each box has been properly ticked one by one. So we've passed the litmus test of this particular bill according to democratic standards. The reason why we are passing it is the president has been in power now for 6-7 years. There's been a dramatic turnaround in the fortunes of Zimbabwe. We had an economy which had tanked with hyperinflation on a scale unprecedented when he came to power. Now our growth rate is one of the fastest in Africa, and we are going to be consistently the fastest growing economy in Africa now for the next 10 to 15 years. This is given. Zimbabwe is now the comeback kid of the African economic landscape. So we are doing very well. We are part of the global value chain in lithium production. We are building a plant in Richards Bay, I think, or is it Port Elizabeth, for lithium batteries. You are going to get your lithium from Zimbabwe, and we have beneficiated it to the level where we are just one step away from the final product, lithium carbonate. No global south nation has ever done that. We now have the largest steel plant in sub-Saharan Africa, perhaps on the African continent, in Zimbabwe. That's why you will see steel plant here closed. It couldn't compete to the one which was in Zimbabwe. So the president has done a fantastic job. We've got coffers, we've got silos which are full of grain. We don't have to revert to World Food Programme and other UN agencies each season to cross through with famine relief. We don't have all that. So the people are happy with the president, and we are saying if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let him continue with the job.
So seemingly he's the only one that can ensure that truly the vision of Zimbabwe being a comeback kid is seen through. But this bill, Chris, was also passed through a 2/3 majority.
Yes.
You did open it up for public comment.
Yes.
If parliamentary processes then supersede the public's opinion, is it truly democratic?
Well, the public opinion was actually the one which made it to the parliamentarians making that decision. We had 90 days under the constitution of public consultation. And believe you me, on the African continent, there is no African country with a population as organized and structured as the Zimbabwe population. And this is not trying to put roses on our chests. It's simply because we fought a war where every family in Zimbabwe lost somebody. And it was an asymmetrical warfare against a racist and apartheid-supported state in Zimbabwe. And we won by organizing the people of Zimbabwe that were to be rise to a superior organization beyond what the British colonial state had done. So we are a very structured and organized country on the African continent because we fought a war throughout. So we are very democratic by nature in Zimbabwe, and we are risk averse because in war, if you don't calculate your risk well, you die. So we have looked at the transition process which Zimbabwe would have, and there was a lot of effort put at 2028 when there was supposed to be a changeover of the president by detractors and hostile forces. They had marshaled themselves around that particular point. And being very prudent about risk in Zimbabwe, we said, let's move the handover of the baton stick a little bit further down the line. We want to see those who are busy trying to plot against the democratic process in Zimbabwe, how they can sustain themselves for another 2 or 3 years. The vulnerability of a relay race is at the handover of the stick.
Yeah.
We have avoided that.
Right. Some may say to the country's detriment, just reviewing Mnangagwa's past record. But you may be very well aware of the current marches that are happening in South Africa.
Yes.
March and March, just before we had our conversation, is protesting again in the Western Cape. Now, their plight is to have illegal immigrants in the country repatriated home. Have you had any conversations with the South African government to repatriate some of the Zimbabweans that say that they want to go back home? We
are sister parties. Zimbabwe is ZANU-PF and the ANC. I grew up with the ANC cadres. So
mubvunzo uri kungobvunza iwo kuti sezvamuri kuona zviri kuitika munyika yeSouth Africa kudai, mune here any conduct yamakaita neSouth Africa or mune here any action yamuri kuita pamusoro pevana veZimbabwe kuti muone kuti vabatsirika sei? Ndo mubvunzo uri kungoda kungopindurwa chete. But now Mr. Mutsvangwa vari kutaura iwo vachiti hanzi isusu ZANU-PF ne-ANC we are brothers and sisters. Apa hapasi kuda, handisi kuona sokuti pari kuda kuti vapindure seizvozvo, but pari kungoda kuti vapindure kuti vane here any action se mhuri yeZimbabwe or se government yeZimbabwe kuti vane here any action yavari kuita pamusoro pevana veZimbabwe. Handitika let's
Samora Machel, Soweto 76. This is June June, you know, we are that generation which went out to fight against the system. So we know each other very well. I've worked with Matthew Posa in Maputo as far back as the 1970s. Ruth First was doing my research when I was the broadcaster at Voice of Zimbabwe in Mozambique during the struggle. So we know each other very well, the NC and ZANU-PF. We do consultations. We understand the pressures which are upon the regional economy, which is a post-apartheid inheritance. You know, racism in Southern Africa is a product of the British and the Americans bring the American model to the South African gold mines in the 1870s. And that racism has sustained itself. So when we see these marches, it's basically an exploitation of poor people against poor people. We had a big exodus of whites coming from Zimbabwe in 1970s. We had a big exodus of whites coming from Zimbabwe in 1980s when they ran away from majority rule. We had a big exodus of Portuguese when Mozambique became free. They were white. They came here. They were never treated as foreigners. But when it is black people moving across the border, they are treated as foreigners. And I want to ask the paradox. How do you treat a vendor who lives across the Limpopo on the other side of Zimbabwe and is Zimbabwean, and a vendor who lives on the South African side in Zimbabwe? You know, but the other point, we in Zimbabwe have got 16 languages. Do you know which languages we include? Zulu, Ndebele, Xhosa. All these languages are official in Zimbabwe. So we are inclusive. We gave everybody citizenship in Zimbabwe after Malawians, we gave them, Zambians, we gave them citizenship.
You know, I think
so we see, what we see is an exploitation of poverty by those who want to control the sub-region. Yeah, that's what it is. No, it's not xenophobia.
The plight here really for those who are marching is saying those who are undocumented need to be sent back home. And there are, in fact, Zimbabweans that have said they are willing to go back home. Are you looking to repatriate those citizens who want to go back home?
We are busy repatriating them. Those who want, they come on their own.
How many have you repatriated
I'm
thus
not
far?
sure privy to the figures, but my ambassador in Pretoria and probably my Minister of Home Affairs who does immigration, if I had been prepared for this, I would have given you. But our economy is doing very well.
And it is this very...
So we have no particular misgivings about Zimbabweans coming back home because we have got the ability to absorb it because our economy is now doing very well. We are creating a genuine African middle class, not a professional middle class like you have here. It's rooted in property, in land, in gold, in mines. This is what we have created. We can absorb this historical anomaly which was caused by the uneven distribution of capital on the African continent. In colonial times, racist times, apartheid times, capital favored white. So Zimbabwe and South Africa, we were the supreme recipients of Western capital, and everybody migrated to Southern Africa. It's natural. But we are reversing that.
There are claims that President Mnangagwa has said that Zimbabwean citizens should come back the same way that they left. Is that true?
No, it's not true. I mean, people came here voluntarily. If they can come back home voluntarily, so we will accept them. But we have created institutions within our government to receive Zimbabweans. We are told our immigration authorities that those who are bringing in property, they are exempt from usual customs payment duties, which follow normal trade. We see this as a special case. You know, remember, Zimbabweans are voluntarily already going back home. The biggest number of returnees, for your own information, as a population group, is whites. There were so many Zimbabwean whites who came in from 1970s, gapping the war of Ian Smith, and those who gapped the independence to South Africa. There's massive construction in the affluent suburbs by the returning whites from South Africa. That is not talked about. Those are voluntary returnees, and they are investing back home. So this particular case is just the Western countries and those with vested historical interests who want to see Africans on the bottom of the ladder, and then they force those Africans to fight against each other because they're on the bottom of the ladder. But look, the governments are aware of the challenge. It's an economic challenge. It's a development challenge. And the two presidents, President Cyril Ramaphosa and President Mnangagwa, they have met. We are now creating value chains across the two countries, the two nations, where we are going to be approaching development in Africa as two nations. Probably we include Mozambique. We cannot let Morocco take the flagship of industrialization from Southern Africa. South Africa and Zimbabwe must have a duty bound to do that. These are the issues which matter to us, not this distraction which is going on.
I don't know if they're distractions because it is citizens, your own citizens, that are saying that they feel unsafe and that they want to come back home. And in fact, having left precisely because there are no economic opportunities, and you've indicated that you're one of Africa's fastest growing economies. The IMF has indicated that they're expecting a 5% growth, but they're also forecasting that you will have a shortfall of some, you'll probably fall short to 4.6% growth in this economic year. But let's talk about then your plan of action going forward for these very citizens. How are you going to ensure that Zimbabweans who are traveling to South Africa are properly documented and that those who are being repatriated back home actually have economic opportunities?
Well, the economic opportunities are there. They are spontaneous. You come back home, you know, this growth is being achieved by Zimbabweans. For example, Zimbabwe new farmers, 182,000 registered families. they produce the best Virginia tobacco in the world for flavors. Each year they share $8 billion. Each year, annual, each season. This, and we've got another 2 million young people digging gold in Zimbabwe. Gold is everywhere in Zimbabwe. That's why our currency is so strong. You know, we can even claim that we are now stronger than the rand, because we use the US dollar as our currency. And the US dollar in Zimbabwe, on the current account, we have a surfeit of US dollars. So this is an economy which is doing well. It has the capacity, and the two governments are putting structures to accommodate precisely this question which you are posing. But there's a more fundamental issue. Yeah. We need to see how we accommodate minorities all over the sub-region so that we create a homogeneous society, harmonious society, where capital can thrive across the region. And we're looking at maybe hosting a minority summit in Victoria Falls, which will cater for all of Africa. We, South Africa, and for your information, in Zimbabwe, are instrumental in solving the issue in the DRC and Rwanda. This is a minority issue. So we know what Africa's challenges are. We are rising to those opportunities. Yeah. And I'm the former minister of the War Veterans of Zimbabwe. I started working with the Afrikaners when we were removing Mugabe. I worked with the AfriForum. I've worked with the Afrikaners on the land issue in Zimbabwe. Remember, some of the expropriated people are Afrikaners. We don't treat Afrikaners as foreign to Africa. We treat them as African, regardless of their historical abuse by the British, you know, during the apartheid years. So we are very happy about where the trend is. This is an aberration, this march on march. It's an aberration by people who realize that their African renaissance is taken off and they want to arrest it. We will defeat it the same way we defeated apartheid, racism, and settlerism.
All right. Dr. Chris MUTSVANGWA, thank you very much for your time.
Yes. Chris MUTSVANGWA, thank you so much.
Thank you.